live everywhere, and we're going to start talking about. Today, we're going to be talking about the 3 reasons why narcissists don't let you go. I don't know if you've noticed that, but narcissists want us to leave on their timing, not on ours. So it's not like a normal relationship where 2 people mutually decide that the relationship's over and then they have this breakup. They agree in a way. Sometimes it's amicable, sometimes it's not, but they agree to have a kind of a breakup. But that's not how a relationship ends when you're in a relationship with somebody who's really toxic or really unhealthy or very insecure or very narcissistic. So today we're going to get into how toxic people, how narcissistic people break up, why they break up the way that they break up, and why it has to be on their timing, not on yours. We're going to talk about not only the top 3 reasons, I actually have 5 reasons. I always love to over deliver. So we're going to talk about the 5 reasons why narcissists have to control the timing of the breakup. I'm also going to talk about why narcissists struggle with you discarding them, why they struggle with you deciding to end it on your terms, how they experience that, and why it becomes so difficult for so many of us. Now, this is an extremely complicated situation, an extremely complicated dynamic. I don't want to oversimplify this because I think that just doesn't give it good credence. So first, let me pause and introduce myself and give you a little bit of background to why I know something about this, not only on a professional level, but also on a personal level. So I'm Dr. Kerry McAvoy. I'm a licensed psychologist. I am able to practice, although these days I primarily don't. I these days mostly do a lot of education, and I love to do thinking about this, theoretical thinking about this, and I'm continuing to keep up on the continuing education and understanding of narcissistic personality disorder, as well as all personality disorders that relate to the cluster B, which is considered the antagonistic group. That makes up of 4 different types of personalities. That is the narcissistic personality disorder, the antisocial personality disorder, the histrionic personality disorder, and the borderline personality disorder. This particular group is considered antagonistic because they tend to either be unstable, they tend to struggle with connecting with other people in a very healthy emotional way, either because of emotional instability or because of lack of empathy, lack of compassion, or because they see relationships as an accessory, almost like something to be weaponized and used. So because of that, there's this mindset of which they approach relationships that make it really hard to get out. Because it's not between 2 people who are sharing equity, sharing power, sharing control. It's really between them and, view yourself in a way, if you're in a relationship with like somebody like this, as a car. So when a person decides that they're getting rid of a car, they don't go out and have a conversation with the car and say, now listen, I think you know that we're not doing really well and I'm getting bored with you and you're kind of wearing out and your tread on your tires is getting really low and I just don't have the funds to put new tires on you. So I think it's time for me to trade up. They don't have, wouldn't have a conversation like that with a car. So they don't view themselves as needing or owing you actually in a conversation like that either. But on the other hand, because you're an accessory, I think that's the best way to think about this. And if you're interested in understanding the theoretical background to how people see other people, I would highly recommend you check out the psychodynamic theory, particularly the wing of object relations theory in psychology. That's where you're going to get a lot more of this kind of interpersonal dynamics to understand it, which is just really fascinating stuff. Because we, to some degree, we all are a little impaired in how we see each other. I mean, if in a world with really totally healthy people, I would completely value your autonomy, your individuality. I would celebrate your uniqueness. I would make space for you to have differing views and differing feelings, and you would do the same for me. And we would find a way to sort of collaborate with each other to where it's a win-win for both of us. But let's get honest, that's not how the world looks. That's not how the world is working. We can see that in all sorts of realms that are actually, frankly, quite uncomfortable about how that's not true, that we don't see other people as on the same footing with the same rights. I mean, even thinking this meme going around right now is your body, my control. I mean, that's an example, or Your Body, My Choice. That's an example of how we don't see people as human. So because of that, because there's groups of people, because of their personality style, or because of the way they're raised, or because of their entitlement or their privilege, or whatever words you want to use to it, maybe it's a lot of these variables, they don't view breakups as something that happens between two people. They see it as something that it's about and only for them. And so as a result of that, they don't want you leaving the relationship until they're ready for them to leave the relationship. Unless, and there is a group. I know some of you have experienced those who have a partner who doesn't want to do the leaving, sees themselves as either being the bad person for doing that. And yeah, there is a subtype of people who will set it up to where they make it that you want to get out. And they're deliberately making it really uncomfortable so that you leave them first. But most toxic people don't want you to leave unless it's on their terms. So here are the 5 reasons. I'm going to not give you all 5. I'm going to break them up and kind of spread them out while we have this conversation today. And I know there's people who want to jump on and have a conversation with me today, but I don't normally I don't have people on this live unless we have a setup to where I invite you beforehand, or you talk to me. If you want to do that, talk to me and we can talk about it. So but here's the first reason, and this is one of the biggest ones that has to do back with this personality type. You have to see people as on a continuum from very healthy to very unhealthy. So sort of, and one of the big guidelines on healthiness is your ability to see reality for what it really is. And honestly, none of us do, because you're right now interpreting your world through a grid of senses. So there's chemistry and electricity that's happening between you and the world. And your body, your mind is actually interpreting the signals it's getting from what it's experiencing, what it's feeling, what it's seeing, what it's hearing. And that grid then gets factored through the way you've been raised, your mindset, your personality type, all your experiences, things that you've learned, the failures you've had. And that's why you sort of see the world that you see it. So as a result of that, not all of us are healthy. Some of us don't see things very accurately. We see it very distorted. And the greater the distortion, the more psychologically ill we are. Narcissists and other toxic people who have personality disorders are considered between neurotic and psychotic. So if you put them on nobody, by the way, ever hits this state of complete healthiness. That just doesn't happen. I would love to meet that person, although I think most of us wouldn't like them, because I think we'd find them really psychologically challenging, because we're not that evolved. And so I think that would be kind of intimidating. But I think there have been a few people in the world who's been born, who's existed, who's gotten closer to that. But most of us are really neurotic, insecure. We have some anxieties. Well, we have areas that we're vulnerable, maybe we're really touchy or defensive. But the more you don't see reality for what it really is, and distorted reality is, then the more ill you are. So, for example, somebody who's having active psychosis is not seeing reality. They're seeing a very wild interpretation of some form of reality, but it isn't actually a reality that you and I exist in. Back in the day, I used to work at a psychiatric hospital, and I would work with patients who are psychotic, and they would hear things that I'm not hearing. They would see things that I don't see. Sometimes they would smell things that aren't there, although that usually indicates it's more of a reaction to a chemical. So types of hallucination tells you a whole lot about the person's exposure and what kind of things they're struggling with. But you may even have somebody who's feeling things that I'm not feeling. Again, that has to tend to be more of a chemical induction of a psychosis. But point taken is, if you really want to see a great movie about this, I think that features it really well. I love the movie with A Beautiful Mind. I think A Beautiful Mind gives you an incredible view, a perspective of what it is like to be somebody who's experienced the world from a psychotic position. I once talked to an attorney who had schizophrenia, who was in and out of the hospital as they adjusted his medication, because sometimes medication fails on these individuals, and so they have to go in and have effect changed. And he talked about what that was like, how he would actually have visual hallucinations, and how he'd learned to understand what his particular version of psychosis looked like, so he could recognize it when it was happening. Not all people who are psychotic know that. A lot of them don't know that they're not in reality. So it's not only see things, feel things, hear things, that aren't real, but you also can believe things that aren't real. That's called delusion. So psychosis has two big parts to it. You don't experience reality as it really is, and the other part is you don't believe things that are actually true. So that would believe things like you maybe think that everybody is an alien, some kind of like very distorted thought about people. When people come in, it's usually they have delusions about themselves. People who are having a bipolar disorder, who had a psychotic break, often believe they're Jesus Christ, or maybe they're mother of Jesus. I saw that. So I got to meet Jesus Christ a couple times, and I got to meet his mother a few times as well. Maybe they might pick some other big famous person as well, but that's psychosis. It's out of touch with reality. Neurotic, so I'm going to give you the two ends of what most of us are at. So hopefully you're not psychotic. You probably are not if you're listening to this live. But most of us hopefully are some realm of neurotic. And what neurotic means is that you have, like I said, insecurities and you're defensive, and maybe there's some things you're a little kind of quirky around. You might struggle sometimes to always be the most equitable person in the world. Maybe you have some entitlement in some parts of your life that you're kind of blind to. You might step on people's toes sometimes about some things, but for the most part, when somebody brings it to your attention, you're apologetic. You can reflect on it. You want to be different. You want them to not be hurt. You care about how they feel about it. So you try to do better. We try to do better. Unfortunately, I don't think a lot of us, I wish more of us were in that realm. I don't think all of us are there. I think there are more of us are between these two places of psychosis and neurosis. And that's where personality disorders sit. They sit in between. They're a little on the closer to the psychotic end, but they're not psychotic, but they're definitely not neurotic. And where they really struggle is two big issues. They struggle around being flexible and not being rigid and adaptable. They're not adaptable. They're very particular about how things go. They're very impulsive. And I think the biggest thing that affects us is their brokenness around intimacy. Because they don't see other people as people, they don't really recognize your humanity, your independence, your autonomy. They use you, it's transactional or performative instead of collaborative and mutual and reciprocal. Those are things that they may say those words, but I don't think they truly understand what those words mean. They view people as more what in object relations theories would say is a part object. I don't know why they call it objects, because we're not objects, we're people, but they don't see you as whole. That's the point of it. You're not a whole person. You're a part person. You exist in the sense that they see you breathing and they recognize you're human in the sense that you're breathing, but they don't really recognize your humanity, your individuality, your autonomy, your freedoms. They don't recognize your freedoms. And as a result, they want to control it and use it to their own benefit. So here's the first reason. That was a huge lead up. Thank you for bearing with me. To the first reasons why narcissists won't let you go is because they need you for psychological stabilization. So picture, this is a common analogy that I love to use because it makes a lot of sense to me, because my late husband was a civil engineer and he was into construction. So I actually helped him build our house. So I got to see how a house is built. So when you build a house, you need to have a really level surface and you need to have a firm surface to put the foundation on. That's the first thing they're going to do, is they're going to, whether you put a basement in or whether you put it on a slab, you need a very level and firm foundation so you can pour that concrete on it. Put a rock bed on it and pour concrete on it, and maybe even reinforce it. See, I do know something about construction. Imagine, though, that you build a personality like you're building a house, but you're not putting it on a firm foundation. It's missing things. Maybe it's not level. And as a result of that, it's weak. It has essential flaws in it. And if you'd like to learn more about what those flaws are, I highly recommend you check out Dr. Peter Salerno's book called The Nature and Nurture of Narcissism. You also can find his video that I did with him for the podcast, Breaking Free from Narcissistic Abuse. It powerful, and I know a lot of people had a lot of feelings about that because it's uncomfortable hearing that narcissism is a biosocial problem, meaning it is rooted both in biology and as well as environment and what happens in the raising of somebody. It's a combination of problems. Most of us like to think that it's just a bad environment. If we change the environment, we can fix people. And it's just not that simple. It's just really not that simple. And it's research based. That was the other great piece about his book is if you look at the references and the footnotes, oh my goodness, this guy spent a lot of time really grounding his work in research and theory. So as much as we might be uncomfortable with it, it's the latest understanding of narcissism. It's what we know and what we have found based on all this, you know, years and years of work on the, you know, best people's work. So is, I know we don't like hearing that, but because some of you are really not happy about that video, but it's really, it's fascinating. So imagine though that you have some deficits. Maybe you're a person who just can't hear, you only hear what you want to hear. I think of if back in the day of American Idol, you have people come in and try to sing, you know, they try out, they think they're good singers, and you think, why would you think you're a good singer? You are not a good singer. You are a terrible singer. Where'd they get that opinion? And you know, this person's heard it from more than one person. It wasn't like everybody around them like, oh, you're the best in the world. You know, that didn't happen. You know, somebody probably said, hey, dude, or hey, gal, I wouldn't suggest you go try out. And like, no, I got it. I'm the best. And I think I can really go somewhere, because that's really risky, honestly, to do that. You want to stand in front of Simon Cowell? I personally don't. And I actually have vocal training, and I wouldn't want to stand in front of the guy. So there's a level of blindness that some of us, like true blindness, some of us have about our deficits, that we're not skilled in these areas. And so imagine that a narcissist is blind like that they have these real deficits and they don't see what they don't do. And one of the things that they don't see that they're not very capable of is recognizing you, recognizing your importance, recognizing your feelings, recognizing that you have the right. And of course, that you're, well, not even the right, that you're a separate person, than them. The name of the book is called The Nature and Nurture of Narcissism. And by the way, I'm not really reading comments. I just happened to see that one. So I thought I can answer that. But again, the book is The Nature and Nurture of Narcissism by Dr. Peter Salerno, Saleron. I'm sorry, I spelled that wrong. Salerno. There we go. Salerno, Salerno. Yeah, that they don't recognize your separateness, that you are a completely different person than them, and that because of that differences, you have different experiences and different opinions and different needs, and they don't recognize that. Instead, they see all the strengths that you bring in, the way that you're not impulsive, how organized you are in your life, the way that you handle your emotions, the way you calm them down, the way that you exercise judgment for them and kind of talk them through things. And maybe you make really good recommendations. Maybe you're a planner and that you're helping them to kind of like, maybe you're also a cheerleader and you're encouraging them to do things that they didn't think that they can do. So all of these things that you're doing for them, you're acting as a stabilizer. You're offering, it's as if they're this incomplete puzzle, and then they take your best attributes and they plug in these missing holes of the puzzle. They like maybe they're missing the corner piece. Well, then they use the corner piece of you that you do really good in that area, and then they utilize that for themselves. And maybe there's something else that just they're not kind of blind to, and then they utilize your strength in that way. So one of the reasons they don't want you leaving is because they need you. You keep them, as much as their lives is a chaotic, confusing mess and moving from crisis to crisis and from one difficulty to another, you're providing a level. Could you imagine this person without any help at all? Like, imagine that suddenly the whole world disappears, yet the world moves on, and it wouldn't work because you can't take people out without having everything work. But imagine that nobody helped them. Imagine everybody turned them away and said, no, you got to do this completely on your own. They would mess it up so badly. So you're stabilizing them. That's the first big reasons why they won't let you go. Now, I'm not going to spend as much time kind of doing a buildup, but I think it's important for us to understand the psychological underpinning of narcissism, for us to understand why they keep us so confused. It's not just that they're effective at manipulation and exploitation. Yes, they're good at that, but there's a reason why they're good at it, because they spent their whole life at it. Yes, that's one of the reasons why they're really good at it, but they need this. This is like their air. You know why they lie? Because lying is the way they keep hidden and keep safe. It has psychological meaning to them. It's their adaptation. Again, if we think of evolution and how, say a creature has learned to camouflage itself in order to survive from predators who are after it, That's adaptation. That's how it keeps safe and it stays, has an existence in the world. I think if we'd start to think of narcissists and other toxic people, that their toxic traits are adaptations, that's how they're surviving. Now, I'm not justifying them. Please don't hear me say, oh, then we should understand it and make room for them. No, I'm not saying that, but I am saying that it makes more sense for us. Because here's my big point. I'm not looking for you to stay. I do not have an agenda of that. I don't want us to feel sorry for them either, because I think everybody has a responsibility and accountability to be a better person every day. I think that's our challenge as a human. But I think by understanding why they are the way that they are, then we can get unfrozen. We can break through the confusion, and then we can stop taking responsibility for things that we shouldn't be responsible for. It is not your, I want to, please hear me clearly. And another great book I highly recommend is Dr. Lindsay Gibson. I want to have her on my podcast. If she's ever listening to this, Dr. Gibson, I really want to get a hold of you and have you on. But she wrote the book, Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents. Really, translation, what she's talking about is adult children of narcissistic parents or parents with personality disorders. I wish you'd kind of named it something else, but as psychologists, we're always so careful about how we label things because we don't want to generalize and stereotype too much. Anyway, in the back of her second book called Recovering Children of Emotionally Immature Parents, she has an appendix. And in this appendix is 10 is a Bill of Rights, is your emotional Bill of Rights, 10 Bill of Rights. You have the right to not be used by anybody. You have a right to your feelings, to your freedoms, to your desires. You don't need to do anything that you don't want to for anybody. And I think that's one of the things that narcissists or toxic people definitely don't want to understand. They want to script us, and that's why they won't let us go. So that's why I spent all this time building this up. Okay, here's another one. Back to kind of ties into this broken house thing. So if you're a house with a poor foundation, you're not level. Have you ever been in a house like that? My late husband's father built one. He's deceased as well, so I'm not hurting the poor soul's house or poor soul's feelings. But he built a house that was so not put together well that the doors wouldn't stay shut. Things would roll across the floor. I mean, and in fact, when he sold the house to his own kid, the city condemned it. They had to put so much effort into bringing it up to city code that it could even be sold. So there's a lot of inherent problems with a house that's not level and not up to code and it's not built well. But imagine that's the case, that's who you are. Well, then what does your life look like? Well, anybody of us who've been around somebody like this, my ex couldn't keep a job, handled money really poorly, couldn't plan, highly impulsive, getting himself in trouble. He was doing things that were risky that may eventually catch up with him and shorten his life. Also, going to get him in trouble with people. I mean, going to piss people off. So imagine a life like that. Well, when you're in that and you're providing some sort of stability for them and keeping their life normal, the other thing that you're doing is it's running you down because it's costing you a lot. For one, they're criticizing you, making you feel like you're not all that because how dare you be better than them. As much as they have elevated you and put you on a pedestal in the love bombing stage, and here's an off point. I'm going to add just a kind of an off, a side comment. Watch out for anyone who idealizes you, who thinks you're all that, who's never met somebody as amazing as you. If you hear any of that kind of language that builds you up and makes you feel like extra special, watch out, because that is already telling you you're meeting somebody who's not stable, who has a pattern of idealization, and also is warning you they're going to knock you off the pedestal. As high as they put you up on one, they're going to bring you down lower than that. I used to have a mentor back in graduate school when I was wrapping up my PhD who warned us. One of the first lessons he taught us when we started working at the psychiatric hospital is he said, watch out for anybody who thinks you're a nugget of gold. Watch out for anybody who thinks you're a nugget of gold. I'm going to cuss. He goes, because you're going to be turned into a piece of shit. So I took that to heart professionally, but I didn't take it to heart personally. And I forgot to tell you that, for those of you who don't know who I am, not only am I a psychologist, but I got into a toxic relationship despite 20 years of counseling. And I know a lot of you have said when you've heard my story, like, how in the world did you do that? And where did you get your degree from? Well, just because you have a degree, one, doesn't make you a healthy person, and just because you have a degree doesn't keep you from very serious tragedy and vulnerability, which what happened in my case. So, yes, I got into a toxic relationship and learned a whole lot from the inside of what it's like to survive one of these relationships. But I missed that. I missed the idealization of me. I don't know how much mine did idealize me. I'm not for sure he really idealized me all that much, but watch out for that. If you meet somebody like that, that's a warning sign. But so point number two, one of the reasons they don't want to let you go is because they're afraid you're going to do better. Have you ever had a job where you thought you really did a bang up job of your job? You really loved it and you really got into it. You were one of these people who sort of advanced it and think that you just grew the whole position, and then they hire someone even better than you. At least you think they're better than you, and this person's going to go in and sort of turn things up and possibly outshine you. It's hard. Walking away from the job, letting somebody else come in and do a different job at it, maybe even change it, maybe in ways that you didn't think, you feel shown up. So imagine as a healthy person how that feels. And now imagine that you're not that healthy. You're not that healthy. You're a little on the edge towards, like I said, you're sitting between, you have what George Simon calls, which I really like, Dr. George Simon, another person's work that I really think a lot of, a character disturbance. You have a character disturbance that you can't tolerate it. You have instabilities inside of you and you can't tolerate being shown up. You can't tolerate having your partner walk out and get healthy and glow up. And that's what we do. I mean, what happened to me when I was in that toxic relationship? Here I'm writing so much on Quora at the time that I was named the year into the marriage, which I was no longer writing, one of the top writers of the year. I wasn't even writing anymore because he was such a mess. There wasn't the space for it. So a lot of what we get in these relationships and we lose ourselves, we lose our voice, we start to lose our shine, we become, because of all the cognitive dissonance and what it does to our mind and our executive functioning, we're not up at par anymore. I've struggled speaking. I actually had selective mutism. Can you imagine that? You're listening to me now speak for an hour at a time, and I speak just fine. But at the time I was in the relationship, I was stuttering, stammering, having all sorts of problems because I felt that dampened and I felt that shook up and insecure, and because he was criticizing me so much and there was so much coercive control. So one of the reasons they don't want to let you go is because they know you're going to do better when they get out of the relationship. Here's a third reason. I'm realizing I'm going really long, so I'm going to kind of move it along so I have a chance to talk to you all. And I realized I had a lot of content that I'm not going to get through today, but we can talk about it another time. Well, the third reason they don't want to let you go is because you're a form of narcissistic supply. So again, this deficit model, they don't have it inside of them to sort of know how to come alongside of themselves when they fail, when they encounter difficulty, when they feel stressed, when life doesn't go the way that they want. They find all of that so upsetting and disturbing. They rely on you to even them out, to talk them off the ledge, to calm them down, to put it in perspective. They look to you to maybe even fix it for them. Maybe you're jumping out and doing stuff for them. And as a result of that, that's all of that is narcissistic supply. It's just not the adoration and admiration we often think about. It's also all the ways in which you're helping them, you're augmenting them and making life better for them. And they're not ready to lose that. And they need that because they can't do that themselves. And on top of it, you're building them up. So whenever they feel like maybe they're about ready to be found out or they're feeling a moment of insecurity, and I know there's big questions out there about how much shame these individuals feel. I'm not convinced they feel tons of shame. I think it's more humiliation, maybe a momentary humiliation. Again, Dr. Salerno has a lot to say about that. I think that's really great information about it because shame does this. When I'm in a shame spiral, first of all, it's not short-lived, it's long, can last for days for me. And I have to make a plan to how I'm going to avoid having that happen again. That's how unpleasant it is for me. Don't do that again. And boy, I'm going to really learn. But do you see that in these individuals? I don't see that kind of reflection. I don't see that kind of, because shame isn't just a bad feeling. It's not just a toxic thing. It actually is like getting your hand burnt. You learn, don't touch that stove. But I don't see that kind of behavior from them because you'd think they would be learning and adapting to say, I don't want to ever feel like that again. And I don't see that from them. So I think they feel more like called out or maybe a moment of humiliation, but they then expect us to talk them out of that. So that's the third reason. Let me review all of them for those of you who are joining right now. The first reason that narcissists won't let you go is because they need the stabilization and the foundation that you bring to their life that makes their life better. They're leaning into you for that. Number two, they're afraid that if you are not with them, you're going to do better and show them up that they were bringing you down, or maybe that they weren't all that and they don't like that. There's no way they want to be showed up. Number three is you supply. You are a source of admiration. You're source of support and help and organization. You're all these things that you bring to them, not only the good things, positive things they like, but you also bring a lot of hidden things, more stabilizing things to them. Okay, so those are the three that I promised that I would cover, but I want to talk about two more because I feel like it's just too short. The list is too short. The third thing is they really need power and control. When you're not a very healthy person and you can't allow people to be freely themselves, free individuals, in order for you to feel safe in the world, then you need to control over the world. Again, we can see that everywhere. Really, really dangerous, toxic people like lots of control. It's the way they keep things from going wrong because they're doing things wrong. So it helps them stay out of trouble and get to sort of manage their image, which they're all about management, image management. So, and they also really like power because power is connected to control. So if you have power, you can have control. I don't think power ever happens without control. I think you have to have a lot of control in order to have power. They tend to sort of like occur together. So as a result, to have a person walk out means they are no longer under your control, which means you're losing control. That makes them feel scared. Not scared like, oh, I'm shaking in my britches kind of a thing. It just makes them feel upset, like dysregulated. Maybe that's a better way to say it. So it shakes them up, makes them feel dysregulated. That's also an attack on their ego because how dare you think you're a person? It's like your car. Do you want your car to actually start up and drive away without you? I mean, that would be pretty upsetting. We think our car is fully under our control. So the idea of you having that kind of control shakes them up on a massive world level. And they don't want that. They want you under their thumb so that they can have this sort of set everything that's happening around you, which is why there's so much coercive control, which I don't know if you guys know what that is, but if you don't, coercive control is hidden control. It's a way of keeping someone vulnerable, off balance, confused, hungry, tired, not in good health, anything to keep you in not good health, not in your best frame of mind for you to have a lot of all your functioning, so you're not high functioning, that keeps you under their control. So a lot of them are very much into coercive control, which is they control your environment, they control the level of privacy that you have, they control your access to stuff like money and time and privacy and people, relationships, in order to maintain control. If you can't see other people, then you can't talk about what's happening in that relationship. And if you don't talk about what's happening in the relationship, then you might not know that's not normal. And you might not know that there's resources, and you might not then get the help that you need to get out. You see what I'm saying? That's an example about how control and power work. Okay, so that's reason number 4. Now, reason number 5 is because, and I kind of hinted about this already, is they're all about image management. So again, think back to person with deficits. There's something wrong. They have a character disturbances, that they're missing things like good judgment, impulse control. They're doing things they shouldn't be doing. Maybe they have some addictions. They're making really bad decisions. They tend to go with their feelings. All these things that are happening to this person, well, that doesn't make you that's not a good image. It's not a good look on you. In a healthy environment and a healthy culture, which I'm not for sure we're very healthy at the moment, we shouldn't think highly of a person like that. We would say, watch out for so-and-so. You don't want to go into business with them. Or watch out for so-and-so because we really don't want to trust them with this. Or watch out for so-and-so because we don't want to leave our kids with this person. You see what I'm saying? It has to do with how people see us. And how people see us then shapes how much influence and how much they trust us and depend on us. So in order to sort of have the best face, then you need to sort of keep under wraps what you're doing. And how do you do that? Well, you don't let the people who know the truth out to tell the truth. So the last reasons why they won't let you go is because they're protecting their image. And to have you out there, suggests that one, they don't win all the time, that they lose, that they've lost control of you, but that also then means there's another version of the story that's happening. So I did say, and I want to jump into it really briefly, how they feel if you leave first. And I want to kind of stop for a second and add a caveat that this is then where where it's really dangerous. Because again, person has a character disturbance. It means they're not all put together. They don't have a lot of impulse control. I know I keep saying that. Impulse control is really important. It's not just about saying no to something. It's not just about not watching too much porn. It's not about just not eating too much or getting to the gym. It's also about things like reining in your emotions and setting good limits with yourself and not breaching boundaries and not doing stuff that you shouldn't do. It's all about all of that. And when you have a fragile ego, meaning not fragile like, oh, they're broken and weak and we need to feel sorry for them. I mean like not stable, not healthy, not whole. Then as a result, you're very vulnerable to being wounded. You're very vulnerable to being affected by what people do to you. I think that's the best way to think about it. It's a way that people affected by the way people think about you. So their self-worth is tied into their image, which isn't real. Okay, did you catch that? Their self-worth is tied into their image, which they curate, but it's actually not real because the truth is what they do. And we all knew they're not doing great things. But when you leave, that then attacks that image and says, you know what, this is a person I don't want to be with. And none of us ever, like anybody of us, to have somebody walk out on us. We just don't. We want to be chosen. We want to know that we have value to this person. But leaving confirms that you don't have value to that individual, that for whatever reason, it's not good for them to be in it. And that's a massive blow to everyone, but it's a huge blow if you're a person with an unstable personality. So that's the first thing, is be careful about that, because you may do it in the best way you think you know how. You may soften it. You may put all sorts of try to help them understand why you are where you are in your opinion. It doesn't, but it won't change how they interpret it. And you actually probably don't know how they're interpreting it because they're going to not tell you. But it may be some very strange way that you have no idea what they're doing with it. And that then may lead to feelings of, for them to feel like you've betrayed them, even though you didn't, make them feel like you've attacked them, even though you didn't. It may even make them feel like you're making a statement about them, even though you didn't. But they may do some very strange things with this injury to themselves. And then that may lead to rage and desire for revenge. So be really careful about this at this point, because that's when you're very vulnerable. You're going to be very vulnerable in that, because you don't know how they're interpreting it, because they're not going to tell you. And you also don't know what they're going to do about it, but you know that they're having a reaction to it. I know that for me, I was so terrified of that I didn't leave first. I waited for him to leave me. I wanted to leave, but I knew that it was going to not be good, and that mine was really dangerous. So I needed him to leave me. So I was happy that was happening. Here's another way that they feel, and I kind of talked about it, is because they feel a lot of revenge and they want retaliation. I'm going to tell you a story, and I'm going to tell you how people interpret it, and I think the interpretation's right. I met a guy online about 5 years ago who apparently liked me. I don't know why, because he doesn't know me. We had one date. He doesn't know me. We went out again a year later, because at the time I met him, I was really just newly out of the relationship, and I really wasn't in the mindset to meet anybody, and he triggered me in some ways. He had some similarities to my ex, and I just wasn't ready to meet somebody like that. So we met up a year later, and I'm thinking, well, I'll give him a second chance. Maybe I'm feeling better. I walked away and thought, he's not ready for a relationship. So again, I turned him down and said, no, thank you. He circled back again 2 more years later. Now we're talking, it's been 3 years. And we went out a few times, and I realized this guy is not healthy. He's got some weird habits. He's hurtful. He's critical. He's not looking for a relationship. He's looking just to have a woman in his life. And I don't want to be a woman in somebody's life. So again, I turned him down. And this time I blocked him, because he just kept turning up, and I just didn't want him to do that anymore. So I blocked him. He then reached out to me and found me, and then attacked me for blocking him, and then wanted to know why I didn't want to be in a relationship. Now, why did I tell you this whole story? Because this is a person, I think, I have no proof of this, but some of the people that when you turn them down, they think you think you're better than them. I'm not saying you feel that way. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. I didn't. I just didn't thought it was a match. But because some people see things as have meaning, and they then see it as an insult, like this world's a hierarchy and people are either winners or losers, that you saying no makes them a loser. And they then want to retaliate against you for that. So some people suggest the reason he keeps popping up is because he wants to get you into a relationship so he could hurt you, to show you, put you back in your place for seeking him. Or I'm sorry, put you in your place for rejecting him. He wants you to know that you're not all that. Now, I never thought I was all that. That is not, as you can hear when I described why, it was never, the first reason was just because he had some similarities that I just was uncomfortable with. It wasn't his fault. Didn't mean it was anything bad or good about him. It was just, I wasn't in a place for meeting somebody who had some similarities to my ex's history. But he might have took it like me thinking that I'm better than him, and he wants to make sure that I know that I'm not. So watch out for that, because sometimes when you leave a narcissist, they see this as a statement about how you think and feel about yourself, even though you're never making that statement. And because they, in their own mind, and by the way, psychopaths really do this. Sociopaths and psychopaths are very, very prone to revenge and retaliation and grudge holding. Really, really prone to it. So watch out for that, because that may be a very dangerous spot for you, because even though you're like, I never framed it that way, it's not even crossed my mind, it doesn't need to be. It's the way they see the world. But here's another way that the feeling they have about being discarded is they feel like it's an extreme loss of control, and it's not on their timing, and they're desperate. Now, back in the day when I was seeing patients, I would get clients, particularly usually men. It wasn't usually women. And I'm not saying anything about gender. I just said that this is who usually came in. They would come in, and I realized they were narcissistic, and they would tell me that their partner recently left them, that they still really loved this person. They were frantic about it, and they wanted me to help them get this person back. It was they wanted to help me manipulate them, help them manipulate their partner to get convince their partner to come back. And I recognized that it was because they felt a loss of control, and they weren't ready, that there really wasn't actual real love, because here's what love looks like. Love recognizes that you have the freedom to make your own mind. You have a freedom not to want to be in a relationship, and that would respect your no. It would let you walk away. But when you meet somebody who can't let you do that, who then ends up feeling like they're basing their value of their life and the future of their life on you and what you're going to do, and it's all over if you're not in it, that's not a complete person. This Jerry Maguire, I know, again, I'm dating myself, this Jerry Maguire view of the world of you complete me is a dangerous one. We shouldn't be in a relationship because people complete us. We are complete in ourselves. So if you have somebody who just feels like they're threatening to harm themselves, or they're threatening to do something big or dramatic, that's a desperate effort to regain control. So that's how they feel about it. They feel like it's an injury. It creates a lot of pain. There often is a desire for retaliation. They're enraged by you doing it, and there often is a desperate effort to regain control back over you, which I want you to recognize that. So when they're attempting to hoover you back in, this is not a compliment. I know when it happened to me, and yes, I got hoovered. I got hoovered into the relationship for another year. It's not a compliment. It's actually, they're going to hurt you worse than they hurt you the first time. Now, in a healthy relationship, people getting back together, it's fine. There's no problem with it. I would not say to a healthy two people who realized they made a big mistake and they weren't very mature, I wouldn't say, avoid getting back together again. But when you're in a relationship with somebody, when you recognize has a lot of narcissistic traits and they circle back, yeah, don't. Because this is not on equal footing. This is an effort to get you back and to prove to you that you're not all that. Even though you never thought that about yourself. It doesn't matter you don't think about that about yourself. They think that way about you. That's what matters. Okay, so thank you for listening to me for 45 minutes. I'm going to now read your comments and see what you guys have to say about what I've said. Yeah, so questions for me, things that maybe you've wondered about when it comes to breakups and how breakups happen. Maybe you're in a breakup and you're feeling really confused about it. Maybe somebody's trying to hoover you back and you're wondering what you should do. Maybe you've been feeling super guilty about it because you've got kids involved, or because it's complicated, or because it impacts you financially. So let's talk about let's talk about this and what you can do and maybe the issues you're having. And hey, Kylie, I'm so glad you found this here too. I'm glad you're here. And I always love getting to know new people. I do watch names, even when they're handles like on TikTok. And I try to like get to know people who come in every week. By the way, for those of you who don't know, I do this every week. So I come on here every week to educate people. I usually spend the first 30 to 40 minutes or so educating, and then I take your questions for the last 20 or so minutes, but we'll wrap this up at 5. So I hope you'll join me in the future, because I love hanging out with you. I love educating, because I believe fully that one of the biggest ways for us to get free from people and to get out of these relationships is understand the dynamics of them so that we have more choice, that knowledge really definitely is power. So Rachel said on Facebook, I went from a psychopath to a sociopath. What can you do? And I have kids with a psychopath, and the sociopath and I broke up a month ago, and now he's trying to hoover me back. So thank you so much. Yeah, that's tough. And I have a feeling you didn't say this because you didn't write this into your comment, but I have a feeling that the psychopath is being highly manipulative with you around custody issues and raising the kids, and probably smearing you horribly and doing all sorts of things. So yeah. So when you ask, what can you do? I don't know quite what you're asking regarding what to do, but maybe you want to say more, Raquel, and I'd be happy to talk to you about that. So 21.5 just said, my in-laws are trying to enter back through my stepson, and they're telling him they're coming over to my house, but they never came to my house. Yeah, isn't that amazing how they do this manipulative strategies to wedge tension and create this? Even just think about this for a second. What probably happened when that happened? You got alarmed. It made you think you were out of control. You probably in that moment felt like scared, not scared, but edgy, like what's happening? Are they just going to suddenly be on my doorstep? So in other words, it dysregulated you, made you look kind of odd, and then made you feel embarrassed in front of your kids because it made it a crisis, even though nothing actually happened. And I've noticed toxic people really like to do that, to really stir up drama. Speaking of that, those of you who watch me know that I don't watch TV like TV channels like ABC, CBS, and NBC. I watch a lot of Netflix and Hulu and Amazon Prime, but I just went to Europe, and when I was on the Europe, there was a flight movies, and they were playing movies that I don't usually get to see because I don't go to the movie much. But I have to tell you guys, you want to see a really good movie about gaslighting. And it was a woman doing the gaslighting to a friend. It's called Mother's Instinct. And it's with Anne Hathaway, and Jessica Chastain played the other person's role. And oh my goodness, you guys, the amazing movie. Disturbing. I want to tell you, it's a disturbing movie. But it's very well done. Of course, I think Anne Hathaway just is an amazing actress, and so is Jessica. I think both of them are solid actresses. So if you want to watch what happens, and it's set in the 1950s, back in the day when women were hospitalized for being overly emotional. They called it having a nervous breakdown. So that was another kind of fascinating piece, is what happens when you have one population being really afraid of being emotionally distraught over something, and there's just not the space for you to show up and process that. That also is a form of gaslighting too. It's called Mother's Instinct. It's a movie, Mother's Instinct. Like I said, it's actually, I think they would say it's kind of a horror movie, but it's not. It's not a slash and jump scare, got you. It's a drama. It's a psychological drama that's very disturbing. So I highly recommend it. So if you guys have seen Woman of the Hour, it's not even as intense as The Woman of the Hour, but similar. It's kind of similar to Woman of the Hour. It's definitely a psychological thriller, is what I would say. So yeah, and it's very good about psychological manipulation. It's really good that way. So Maria asked, when I feel like I'm mute and I see that dynamic, when you feel like I live with a mute, and when I see the dynamic childish dysfunctional behavior through my children, Maria, I'm not for sure what you're asking. I think though, what you're at, and by the way, how old are your kids? Can you just tell me how old they are? Yeah, I would love to know what age you're dealing with, because it depends on the age of the kids. Oh, they're adult children. You did say that. Okay, so they're all adults. I think that when we see our kids being dysfunctional and childish and dramatic, I think it's okay so here's an example that happened on my trip. one of my kids can be a little hurtful, a little rude. Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. He gets rude, and it can be insulting to his brothers. And so here I traveled to Europe with my 3 sons, all adults, and myself, just the 4 of us. And one of my sons got rude to one of the other kids, one of my other sons. And I stopped and said, you know what? We're not doing that on this trip. That's hurtful. I'm just not comfortable with it. And my oldest son stopped and said, you're right. I shouldn't have done that. I'm not going to do that again. Thanks for calling me on it. Now, that's a healthy exchange that happened. It could have not gone healthy. It could have said, what are you talking about? Or how dare you call me out? Or I find it insulting that you would say that. But my point is, I think even though, Maria, that they don't like it, and maybe it's hurtful, I think we still have a responsibility to say, you know what, I'm not comfortable with that. I don't like that here. I'd like us not to do that to each other when you're in my house. Oh, they're not the problem, and their dad is the problem. Yeah, that makes it really tough. I think that makes it even more difficult because we know that they have to have their own relationship with their other parent, and that's not our business, their relationship with the other parent. But I also know at times that we don't want abusiveness in the house. So it's really a challenge of how to walk that line. That might be something where I know that you talking to him is not going to get you anywhere. And I also don't necessarily want to encourage you to go circle around him and say to your kids, how did that make you feel? Because that then's kind of triangulating. It's tough. It's really, really tough. I think those are the moments where it's best that we just say what we say. Like, I don't like that here. I'm not comfortable with this being a discussion at the table. But it's a really uncomfortable situation, one of which you're out of control with. Okay, so Sam on YouTube said, my estranged husband, who's a therapist, has been stalking me in the middle of the night, waving a torch around the garden, activating my cameras, and then he stands out of the view of the camera. Yeah, that's a lot of crazy making. That's back to that kind of that coercive control on an extreme end where they make you wonder if, like, you know, they're doing something, but yet you can't prove it because you don't quite have because they have deniability. That's the problem. You know they're doing it, but they've got deniability. That's one of those situations where I'd be tempted, honestly, to do something around I don't know what I would do, because do you want your cameras off? I'd be tempted to take the camera offline or make it less reactive, or maybe not have the lights go on, but the camera, I don't know. But because they're very effective at finding ways to irritate us and make us feel like we're driving us crazy. Yeah, somebody else says move the cameras or move them around so they keep them guessing. But see, that's a lot of work, and they love to create work for us. And I think that's the part that's so frustrating, is that I'm sure part of the dynamic, Sam, is to make you feel helpless, so that you feel like you're constantly out of control and you just don't have the power over your own life. Yeah, but I would be tempted to sort of so back in the day, I used to work with troubled teens, delinquent teens. I worked in a group home when I was going to graduate school, like you want to know that. But one of the things that happens with delinquent teens is they're very good at making you realize that you don't have control over everything. So at night, they would say, time to go to bed, turn the TV off. Not going to. They'd say, I'm not going to. And it becomes a standoff. I quickly learned the best way around that is to simply go up to the TV. This is in the day with a TV that had one that actually removed from the back of the TV, the cord. And I could pull the cord out of the back of the TV and pull the cord out of the back of from the where it plugs in, and then walk off with it. Now you can't turn the TV on. It is off. So if there's a way that you could do that, Sam, where you can just take away the power he has to activate your cameras, I would do that. Yeah, that would, but how irritating to have that happen to you. And that's a great example of how he's taking back control and power over you. Yeah, so Smalley says, I invested in a Ring doorbell that just picks up everything. So Cheyenne asked, my in-laws use my stepson as a flying monkey. Now I'm seeing muscles in my head. How do you handle that? My stepson lives with us now, and they contact him more than ever. You can't shape how somebody views you. Unfortunately, we just don't have power over that, how your stepson's going to interpret what's happening. But I also know that people are not dumb. And your stepson sees what's happening. Now, he may like it because it's giving him secondary benefits. He suddenly is special. He's become the favorite. Maybe he's getting gifts. All of that may be happening, but it also doesn't, he also is recognizing that they're putting him in the middle and that bothers him. I'm speaking from experience. For those of you who know a bit of my story, my grandmother was probably a psychopath. And my grandmother had big issues with my mother, hated my mother. And she would put me dead center in it and wanted me to be my mother's flying monkey. So when it happened, of course I loved being my grandmother's favorite, and I loved the the unearned admiration and favoritism that I got off of that, the special gifts that she would give me versus everybody else. So I did enjoy that, unfortunately, but I also knew that it came at a cost. And I knew that she wanted me to sell my mom out. I knew that. And it put me in a really bad spot and made me feel super bad. Now, does your stepson have the wherewithal to recognize he's being put in a bad spot? And is that going to bother him? I don't know. But what I'm telling you is that he knows. He's not missing this. He knows. So what I would do is just be your best self and, really work at having a good, healthy relationship with him, and then letting him grow up and grow into the realization that they're using him. That's what I would recommend that you do. More people are coming in with that, Sam. More people are coming in with ideas about that camera. They're saying play the camera game. Christy did that, and she said it worked. He actually got tired and stopped. So. Yeah, I would just cease to have it be effective. Now, mine stalked me for a while, but he did it online. He may still be stalking me. He's a big YouTube fan, so maybe he's a follower of mine that's never subscribed. Who knows? But I know that he was like visiting my website like hundreds and hundreds to thousands of times in a year, just a ridiculous amount of times. Now, how it could affect me is I could start to let it stifle me and shut me down and stop talking about things, or I could start to use it as a dog whistle and send him messages. I opted out of all of it. I felt like, to do all of that gives him control over me. I don't want him having control over me. So I just decided, you know what? I'm ignoring that he's doing this, because by me ignoring him is the most power that I can have. I can say, he's not that important. I'm just going to pretend you're not there. And if in my mind I refuse to see you, then I refuse to see you. So that's how I took his power away, is I just refused to play the game. Elizabeth's asking, what's the first step in leaving? The first step in leaving is kind of really complicated depending on your situation, but thank you for that segue, because Lisa Sunny and I don't know if you guys follow her. She's Stronger Than Before. She's got a YouTube channel. She's a huge TikTok channel. She's also got a really good sized Instagram channel. I think she's also on Facebook. Her and I are partnering up to offer a group coaching that's starting January 8th called Trauma Bond Recovery Group Coaching. So if you're looking for help to break out, to figure out how do you leave, how do you stop needing this person, depending on this person, how do you stop centering this person in the middle of your life, then you're going to want to check it out. It's January 8th. And because it's our first group, that we're offering coupons. So if you say to me, hey, I can't afford the fee for this, but I could afford maybe 30% off or 25% off, let me know, because we'd be happy to do that. We really want to promote this group, get it going. And so because it's our very first one out, we would love to offer you a discount just for being our first customers on this. We're already running Healing Strong. Healing Strong starts up January 9th, the next group. We always sell that group out every single time. It's for those of you who are struggling to heal. If you'd like help healing, getting through the rumination and the triggers and all sorts of that, check out Healing Strong. It's on my website page. I don't have a website page yet for Trauma Bond Recovery Group Coaching, but I do have the link that's in my link tree. So if you go to click on where the links are, or if you look in the live on this YouTube channel, it's in there. You can sign up there for it. You'll be working with us in a small group of 8 people for 12 weeks. It's live, it's personalized, it includes direct contact with us, it includes a community building. There's so much that we're putting into this for you guys. So I definitely would love to have you be a part of it. So co-parenting, this is the last question I'm going to take Raquel's question. Co-parenting with a very controlling dad. Raquel, are you still in a relationship with him, or are you guys divorced? There's a lot you can't do. Your children are 5 and 13. What you can do is provide them a sense of stability. You can provide them an alternate worldview. You can use all sorts of things, like watch TV with them and talk about what you're seeing and talk about how it makes them feel, about what you think about that, whatever you're seeing. Like, for example, say you're watching some reality show. Maybe you're watching Survivor or something. I don't even know if Survivor's on anymore, but say you're watching something with them. You can use that as a chance to say, wow, look what that person did to the other person. How would that make you feel? Just getting them to think outside the box and to see other perspectives, to get a chance for them to sort of self-reflect and develop what's called cognitive empathy. All of that is so helpful. It really gives them a chance to sort of see your worldview, get them to kind of almost view things like a rubrics from different perspectives. And that's a real easy way, because you're not talking about dad and you're not talking about what's happening in the home, but you're just talking about life and relationships. Here is a fascinating statistics that I saw several years ago about teenage influence on teenagers. You would think that teenagers no longer pay attention to parents, that you become passe. No, you don't. Actually, you continue to be one of the biggest influencers in their life all the way through to adulthood. So don't downplay the role that you play by just being there. I took my kids to the library. We got books. I'd read their books. We'd talk about their books. I would play their video games. We'd talk about that. In other words, get interested in their life and what they're doing, and then use that as material to talk about relationships and ethics and being a good person and what's healthy and all of that stuff. Like talk about Gossip Girl, watch Gossip Girl and talk, they're boys, they might not want to watch that, but, or how about Ready Player One, watch Ready Player One with them and talk about what happened in that, because there's a lot of fascinating relationship dynamics in Ready Player One. That's awesome. It's appropriate for their age and it's a lot of fun, and yeah, so that's what I would do. All right. Next week, I don't know what the live is about yet. I haven't decided, but I will let you know and post it as fast as I'll post it probably tomorrow. But I would love to see you back. We always do this every week at 4 p.m. Central Standard Time. And yeah, so thank you so much for being here with me today. This is an amazing time. I'm going to hop off now and join my Toxic Free Relationship Club, where we go live for every week with my group members. So if you're looking for more direct contact with me, you'd like more support, and you like access to the course that I have and all sorts of stuff. I have all sorts of really goodies that I give people who are members of my club. Consider that so much. Yeah, more lives. Thanks, John, for saying that. I do it once a week. It's very hard for me to do it as it is, because I do so much outside of social media with people. I work with you guys so much on the outside that I really have a limited opportunity to do lives these days, but I do love it. It's a lot of fun. All right, I'll see you back here next week. Thank you so much for being here today, and I can't wait to see you on the next topic. Bye-bye.